All right, today we're going to dig into something so fundamental, so basic, that most of us never even think to ask about it. But the answer, well, it secretly runs our entire world. We're talking about money, and we're about to pull back the curtain on its biggest secret. I want you to do something for me. Think about the cash in your wallet right now, or maybe just the numbers in your bank account. That piece of paper, it's not made of gold or silver. You can't take it to a bank and trade it for a chunk of metal. So why is it worth anything? What gives it the power to buy you a coffee, or a car, or even a house? And the answer? Well, it's kind of simple, but it's also totally mind-bending. The money we all use every single day is essentially a story, a shared belief. It's this incredibly powerful fiction that we've all agreed to participate in. And once you understand how that story works, believe me, you will never look at money the same way again. But listen, it wasn't always just a story. To really get what's going on now, we have to rewind the clock. Because for most of human history, money was very, very real. It had value you could literally feel in your hand. For centuries, it was simple. If you had a coin, its value came from the gold or silver it was actually made of. An old Roman coin was valuable because the metal itself was scarce and desired. You were trading a real physical thing for another real physical thing. No trust required, really. So how did we get from these heavy metal coins to flimsy pieces of paper? Well, it was a gradual process. It started way back in the Middle Ages with goldsmiths. People would store their gold with them for safekeeping, and the goldsmith would give them a paper receipt. Pretty soon, people realized it was way easier to just trade the receipts instead of lugging the actual gold around. This idea eventually became official with the gold standard in the 19th century, where every dollar bill was basically a claim ticket for a specific amount of gold. But that whole system crashed head-on into a wall during the Great Depression, when that rigid link to gold became a huge problem. And this really shows you the central trade-off of the gold standard. On the one hand, it was incredibly stable. A government couldn't just fire up the printing presses and create money out of thin air, which was great for controlling inflation. But that strength was also its fatal flaw. When a huge crisis hit, like a massive depression, governments were completely handcuffed. They couldn't pump money into the economy to help struggling people and businesses because every dollar had to be backed by a lump of physical gold. Which brings us to a single day. A single day in the 20th century that completely rewrote the rules of money. Forever. August 15th, 1971. I want you to burn that date into your brain. Because on this one day, a single announcement flipped a switch that changed the entire global financial system. In what became known as the Nixon Shock, President Nixon got on TV and basically cut the final cord connecting the US dollar to gold. See, the US had been spending a ton of money on social programs in the Vietnam War, and it had printed way more dollars than it actually had gold in its vaults. Other countries got nervous and started showing up asking for their gold back. So to stop the bleeding, Nixon just slammed the window shut. And just like that, poof, the world's most important currency was no longer backed by anything physical. It was floating completely free. So if money isn't tied to gold anymore, where does it actually come from? This, my friends, is where the story gets really wild. This is the real secret. We now live in the age of fiat currency. The word fiat is Latin, and it basically means let it be done by decree. It's money that has value simply because a government says it has value. So the whole system, the entire thing, runs on one crucial ingredient: trust. Trust in the government, trust in the economy's stability, and maybe most importantly, trust in each other that we'll all keep accepting it. Okay, so this is the key question, right? If there's no physical limit, what stops a government from just printing trillions and trillions of dollars whenever it wants? Now, sure, some money is created by central banks like the Federal Reserve, but that's not the whole picture, not even close. The vast majority of new money is created in a way that honestly just shocks most people when they first hear it. The incredible truth is that commercial banks like the one on your street corner create new money every single time they issue a loan. When you go get a loan for a car, the bank doesn't reach into a vault and pull out someone else's savings. Nope, they just type the numbers into your account on a computer. And poof, new digital money has just been willed into existence. It's literally born as a debt. And that leads us to a really profound reality about our modern system. The amount of money in our economy is directly tied to the amount of debt. When banks are lending more, the money supply expands. And when people are paying off their debts faster than they're borrowing, the money supply actually shrinks. Money is effectively destroyed. So
If our money is just digitally created debt that's backed by nothing but our collective trust, why doesn't the whole thing just collapse? And what are the real risks of living inside a system like this? Well, our trust isn't just floating on air. It's anchored by some really powerful forces. First, governments declare it legal tender, meaning it has to be accepted for all debts. And, crucially, you have to use it to pay your taxes. That alone creates a huge permanent demand for it. But a lot of it is just social habit. We trust the dollar because, well, it's always worked. And ultimately, it's backed by something real, the full productive power of an entire national economy. Of course, a system with no physical anchor has some major risks. Inflation is the big one we all know about. If too much money gets created, each dollar buys less. It also allows governments to borrow on a scale that's hard to even comprehend, and we're still debating the long-term consequences of that. And a lot of critics argue that this system makes wealth inequality worse, because new money tends to flow into financial markets first, pushing up the value of assets owned by the wealthy. And when we talk about government borrowing, the numbers are just staggering. We're talking tens of trillions of dollars. A debt that large would be completely impossible under a gold standard. It is a direct result of living in a system where the only real limit on money creation is policy and political will, not a physical vault full of gold. Now, given all these risks, it's really no surprise that people started looking for an alternative. Things like cryptocurrencies, and especially Bitcoin, were created in the direct aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis. They were designed specifically to be a new kind of money with a hard mathematical limit on its supply, one that couldn't be controlled or manipulated by any government or central bank. So why does any of this matter to you? Because the ability to create and control money is one of the greatest sources of power in our society. It's not some neutral thing that just exists in the background. It is a man-made system with man-made rules. And those rules have a huge impact on who gets wealthy, who struggles, and how our entire society is put together. So the next time you look at a dollar bill, don't just see a piece of paper. See it for what it truly is, a fragile token of our shared story, a little piece of trust. And the question I want to leave you with is this: what and who are you really putting your trust in? Because the answer to that question, that changes everything.